In 1883, construction began on a church in Barcelona. 144 years later, it's still not finished, not abandoned, not paused, still actively under construction. But here's the thing. This isn't a story about incompetence or bad planning. This is a story about one man's vision becoming so complicated, so geometrically impossible, that generations of architects and engineers are still trying to finish what he started. And they may never fully understand how he intended it to end. Before we dive into today's story, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy exploring the logic behind the world's most incredible buildings, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your subscription is more than just a click. It motivates me to keep creating high-quality documentaries that uncover the logic beyond the buildings around you. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story starts in the 1870s. Barcelona was booming. A group of wealthy businessmen wanted to build something that would glorify God and showcase what their city could achieve. They commissioned a church, but after a few years, the project stalled. The original architect couldn't figure out how to make their vision real. So in 1883, they brought in a new designer to save the project. His name was Antoni Gaudí. He was 31 years old, and he looked at the plans, looked at the church, and decided to throw almost everything away and start over. To understand why Sagrada Família took 144 years, we need to understand Gaudí. He wasn't like other architects. While his peers were drawing straight lines and right angles, Gaudí was walking through forests, studying the branching patterns of trees. He was examining spider webs, nautilus shells, and the way waves crash on rocks. He believed that nature had already solved every structural problem. Architecture just needed to copy it. He once said, "Straight lines belong to men, curves belong to God." And he meant it. He believed that no living thing in nature grows in a straight line. So why should buildings? Here's the problem Gaudí created for himself. Traditional church architecture uses straight walls and right angles. You can measure them with a ruler. You can predict how weight will flow through the structure. You can write plans that workers can follow exactly. But Gaudí's design used only curves and organic shapes. Every surface is different. Every column branch is unique. There's no grid to follow, no simple measurements. This meant that every single part of the building had to be individually calculated and hand-carved. And because Gaudí was obsessed with perfection, he kept changing things. Even as construction happened around him, he'd look at what was built and say, "No, actually that column should twist this way. That wall should curve here." He was building and redesigning simultaneously. To build organic shapes, Gaudí used something called a catenary arch. Imagine hanging a chain from 2 points. Gravity pulls it into a perfect curve. That shape is mathematically efficient. It distributes weight evenly. Gaudí realized, if I flip that upside down, I have the perfect arch for a building. Simple idea. But Gaudí took it further. He combined catenary arches in 3 dimensions, creating hyperboloids, shapes that look like they shouldn't work structurally, but they do. The problem: you can't just hand someone a blueprint and say, "Build this." You have to show them how the curve flows in 3-dimensional space. In Gaudí's time, the only way to do that was to build physical models, wooden models, clay models, models made from any material he could find, but even those weren't precise enough. By 1914, Gaudí was completely consumed by Sagrada Família. It wasn't just his job, it was his life. He lived in a small room on the construction site. He refused other commissions. When he needed money, he'd ask donors directly. He'd spend entire nights studying the models, adjusting proportions by centimeters. Other architects thought he was obsessed. His family thought he was abandoning them. But Gaudí believed he was receiving a divine message. He once said that he was just translating God's architecture into physical form. He saw himself not as the creator, but as the translator. And that mindset changed everything. Because if you're just translating a divine vision, you don't compromise. You don't finish when you run out of money or time. You keep refining until the vision is perfect, or you die trying. In June of 1926, Gaudí was hit by a streetcar on his way to the site. He was 73 years old, badly injured. He died 10 days later in a hospital bed just kilometers from the church he dedicated his entire life to. And when he died, he took something with him that nobody could ever get back. The complete blueprint of Sagrada Familia existed only in his mind. He'd never written it all down. He'd never created a comprehensive master plan that future architects could follow. He'd worked from intuition, from models, from divine inspiration, but not from documents. For decades, nobody really knew what Gaudí intended. His vision had died with him. For the next 10 years, Gaudí's successors tried to continue his work from the models and sketches he'd left behind. Progress was slow, interpretations varied. Then, in 1936, the Spanish Civil War erupted. Construction stopped, the site became dangerous, and then, in a moment that seemed to erase Gaudí forever, anarchists set fire to the workshop. The wooden models, the detailed clay casts, decades of physical blueprints, all of it burned. The building itself survived the fire, but its secret died in the flames. After the war ended in 1939, construction resumed. But now architects had an impossible task: recreate Gaudí's vision from memory, from fragments, from interpretations of his sketches. They were building someone else's dream, but without the dreamer to ask for guidance. After 1939, a new team of architects had to make an impossible choice. Do we finish the building based on what we think Gaudí intended? Or do we honor his vision perfectly, even if we're not certain what that vision was? They chose to honor it. They studied every sketch. They photographed the surviving models from different angles. They interviewed people who'd worked with Gaudí. They hypothesized about his intentions, and slowly, methodically, they started interpreting his geometry into contemporary construction techniques. But here's the critical point. They weren't just building, they were researching. Every stone laid was an educated guess. Every column erected was an interpretation. They were essentially solving a puzzle that the puzzle maker never finished. And because they were committed to accuracy, progress was glacially slow. It took decades just to understand what Gaudí's next step would have been. For decades, architects worked this way: educated guesses, careful interpretation, slow progress. But in the 1990s, something changed. Computers became powerful enough to model complex 3D geometry. A Japanese architect named Shoji Tanaka realized Gaudí's hyperboloid geometry wasn't random. It was mathematically precise. If you understood the equations, you could predict what Gaudí intended. Tanaka and his team used computers to digitally reconstruct Gaudí's models from photographs. They rotated them, measured them, analyzed them, and they discovered that Gaudí's curves followed predictable mathematical patterns. Suddenly, the ghost blueprint became real. Digital architects could now say, based on this corner of the building that Gaudí completed, here's how the next corner should be. The puzzle was still incomplete, but now they could read the pattern. With the mathematical pattern finally understood, construction accelerated. But not quickly. Digital precision meant that every stone could be cut with exact specifications. Computer-guided stone-cutting machines could produce the complex curves Gaudí envisioned, something hand-carving could never achieve. But precision also revealed something troubling. Gaudí's vision was so geometrically complex that even in the 21st century, it pushes the limits of what's buildable. Some of his curves require stone pieces that are structurally risky. Some of his design choices would be illegal under modern building codes. So architects today face a question that Gaudí himself never had to answer. When the master's vision conflicts with modern safety requirements, what do you do? Do you honor the dream or do you honor the code? In 2026, something significant happens. The Tower of Jesus Christ will be completed. It's the tallest tower Gaudí designed, 172 meters. And 2026 is also exactly 100 years after Gaudí's death. So in the same year that a century passes since he died, the building reaches the height he intended. It's profound symbolism, but it's not the end. The glory facade is still being constructed. The decorative elements haven't begun. The interior will take years more to complete. Current estimates suggest the building won't be finished until at least 2028 or later. Some experts think 2030, a few think even further. But the point isn't when it finishes. The point is that the 2026 milestone represents something else entirely. It's proof that Gaudi's vision, though incomplete at his death, was never abandoned. For 100 years, through wars, through economic crises, through the death of its creator, through generations of architects debating what he meant, people kept building. The Sagrada Familia took 144 years, not because of incompetence, not because of bad planning, but because Gaudí imagined something that had never been imagined before. He created a puzzle that required a century and a half to solve. Wars interrupted it. His death orphaned it. Fire destroyed the blueprints. But every generation of architects, from his immediate successors trying to decode his vision, to post-war builders reconstructing from fragments, to modern engineers using computers to read his mathematical language, chose to continue. They chose to finish what Gaudí started. And that choice, repeated over 144 years by dozens of people, is why this building matters so much. It's not just architecture, it's a monument to human perseverance, to the idea that a vision so profound, so carefully imagined, is worth dedicating your life to, even if you'll never see it completed, even if you're building a dream you didn't create. That's what Sagrada Familia is, proof that some visions are too important to abandon, some dreams are worth more than a single lifetime.